STARR Video Productions presents Nature Photography Naturally, a video workshop series of nature photography led and instructed by professional nature photographer James Egbert. This series will visit such places as Garden of the Gods in Colorado Springs, the wildflowers of Crested Butte, Castlewood Canyon State Park, and the beauty of Aspen. And now, here's James.
What is nature photography naturally? Well, for the purpose of this video, it means basically we're going to break down nature photography in a natural way. We're going to take away the fear of the camera and how to operate it, and we're going to take you out into the field and immerse you right into the subject that you're photographing. What you're going to learn is the technical terms of aperture priority, shutter priority, running your exposures in certain ways, and artistic composition. All this is going to come together nice and simple for you. So we do this by taking you out into the field and putting you right into the location that we want to photograph. So come along with us as we meet some nice people and take you to the most beautiful places Colorado has to offer.
Valley in Colorado Springs at the base of Pikes Peak lies a majestic garden. A garden not of flowers but of monolithic red sandstones. These magnificent rock formations have taken more than 300 million years to form. The garden has a rich history with Native Americans, and they still use the park today for ceremonies. It is a treasure for geologists, rock climbers, novice photographers, and professional photographers.
Welcome to the Garden of the Gods. Now this is one of my favorite places that I'd like to come to, mainly because I've been here thousands of times and have yet to duplicate the same shot. On any given day you can find anywhere from 10 to 20 different photographers up here working, and we all get something different every time. You can line 6 of us up side by side with identical equipment and identical film, and none of us will get the same shot. Okay, as we're looking at right now, this is conglomerate rock, or otherwise known as kindergarten rock. We also have another name for it called cathedral rock. Most of these formations here have several names. They were named by several different people over a period of time, and they've all adapted as they go. And as we pan a little more, you can start seeing some of the Pikes Peak range back behind us here, and as we come up on South Gateway Rock. As we see here in the middle here, you got a dark area. That is actually known as the gateway to the Rockies. And it's made up of the South Gateway Rock and the North Gateway Rock, which also leads up to the Kissing Camels. Now the Kissing Camels is a hole at the very top of the rock where you see what looks like 2 heads come together and 2 humps on either side of that. That's the 2 camels up there locked in an everlasting embrace. And as we go a little more to the right, we come down to an area that I know is the slot, where I like to get moonshots coming down through there and setting them up inside there. It's one of my favorite little trick spots in there.
James stresses the importance and use of a tripod. The difference between a snapshot and a photograph is the tripod.
Okay, as you can see here, I've got this camera set up in an angle where I'm shooting upwards at a pretty steep angle. That's why I kind of like this tripod, because I can spread the legs out and get it to a point to where I can get in a comfortable position, set the camera up, and then get to some of my other gear as I need to. And the tripod itself allows me to move the legs out in several different directions at the same time, so I can get several things. Now I've got another tripod I want to show you. Now this tripod, as you see right here, is not much different from any of the other ones. Stands up nice and straight and tall, and I can stand this thing up to about a height of a little over 6 foot with an adapter. But it also allows me to take the center post out, turn the piece sideways like that, and then I take the head and I slide it in sideways so that I can do quite a few different things. Now, right off the bat, I can angle the lens upward and come down low and get really low to the ground and shoot at an upward angle, changing my perspective to my subject. Or if I want, and I lock this in place, I could take the legs and spread them out even more And if I were doing some macro work, if I had some wildflowers down here in front of me, I could take the tripod, center it right over the flowers, and now I got my lens closer to my subject down here on the ground, and I can do some really good close-up work here. And it still gives me a nice stable platform to work with, and gives me something I can work with and be comfortable, because I can step away from the camera and have it stay on the subject, and I can bring filters in and use that. And that's one of the most important reasons why I use a tripod, so that I have maneuverability and a stable platform. One element of composition that we have to think about while we're out here is the element of framing your subject. Now, right here over my shoulder, we have a shot of the Siamese twins, and the Siamese twins is basically two columns of red rock that are joined together near midsection. And up above in the background, you can see Pikes Peak with the clouds kind of swirling around it. A lot of what you're seeing up there is blowing snow and some clouds with that. But it makes a really neat composition. Now, this time of day is not really the best time to be up here shooting, but just for illustration point of view, we just wanted to let you see what the scene looks like in bright light. Usually I'd be up here, it's still quite dark, and you're just catching the first rays of the alpine glow up on the peak as it would light up those clouds. So you can imagine kind of a magenta pink hue up there, and then everything down here turns a really bright orange, especially the two red towers. Now we're going to take ourselves down a little bit further and take a look through another section of the Siamese twins known as the keyhole. Alright, now here we are at the keyhole of the Siamese twins, and if you take a look, you'll notice that the keyhole itself adds kind of an odd shaped vignette. This is a really hard area to meter on, but basically don't worry about metering too much on the rock itself. Kind of let it be a shadow and a blacked out vignette. Go with metering on the sky if you have to. Use that as your medium gray card, and then let the peak kind of come in on its own. Well, this concludes our day at the Garden of the Gods, and we hope you got a lot out of it. Remember, we talked about vignetting and framing with these large rocks, and we did a lot of really neat shots with it. The most important thing we did talk about, though, was our tripod. Remember to take yours with you the next time you go out, and make sure you pick a good one. We hope to see you out in the field real soon, so come back and join us.
Crested Butte, internationally renowned for its wildflower festivals and ski slopes, also offers a wealth of photographic opportunities in its abundant alpine meadows, waterfalls, snow caves, and grand high country landscapes. To get to most of these locations, you'll need a good off-road vehicle that can withstand rugged alpine roads.
What we've got here to work with, you have several different segments to work with in here. You've got the light on the peak, you've got clouds, you've got a nice blue sky, and then you have down here your reflection of the peak in the water. And we have a little bit of distracting things in here, but I'm not going to worry about them too much because this is a nice natural scene. It looks okay to me. We have the flowers in the foreground, and eventually we might have a beaver or something like that swim across here. He likes to go back and forth. But what we want to do is we want to balance all this. That's a lot of scenery to try to get into one tiny little frame. So what we need to consider is the difference between the light up here and the light down here in your foreground. That's where this filter here that I was talking about before comes into play, where we can have a dark side and a light side. The light side is going to match up with the lower end of the picture, and the dark side is going to take up here. What happens is, because the film can't do what our human eye and brain does and distinguish between the light and dark and balance it out where we can see it evenly, film only can read one temperature of light, so we're going to trick it and make the top part dark, bottom part nice and light. So we gradient this in just a little bit through the holder and drop that down in there where the dark just kind of comes down right along the horizon of the shot. For me, the horizon is going to be right at the top of the trees. at this point, because I don't want to make the trees any darker than they are, because they're going to end up being black in the shot and you're not going to get any detail. So I just want to get right at the top of the trees where the sun's not going to get down there too much lower for the next hour or so. And we're just going to have a nice red glow up here. I have a warming filter to kind of warm up the shot and kind of give it that nice glow to it. Then the polarizer is going to balance the entire thing and bring everything into perspective, and it's going to sharpen the image considerably. And you see, now I'm getting more detail, because even to the human eye, we don't see all the detail that's there. And if I turn the polarizer just a little bit and change it,
it's crisper.
The real trick of this is, the reason why you want the large depth of field is so you get more detail off the rocks and off the water in your foreground, because you got a lot of foreground here to work with. Now, to compensate to get that angel hair effect that you really want to get, which is very pleasing, you have to have a longer shutter speed. Now, the trick is not to have too long a shutter speed or too short of one. I've come up with a little formula that basically says no slower than a quarter of a second, no faster than a second and a half, or no slower than a second and a half. That way you're
repeat that.
No faster than a quarter of a second, and no slower than a second and a half. Because when you start going too far, this turns kind of a weird color, and you lose a lot of detail, and it overexposes on a lot of things. Now, I got on here a polarizer which can do a couple things. I can take the shine off of some of those rocks and give it a drier look, or I can take just a little bit out to cut down on glare, but I want the rest there in order to give that wet feeling, because I want it to stay that wet way. But the other trick to waterfalls is composition. Just like a good book, you like to have a good story beginning, and you like to have an ending, unless you like what's known as a cliffhanger. I always try to get the beginning of the waterfall. It doesn't have to be the absolute beginning, but the beginning of a particular fall of water, because this one probably falls about 7 times before it comes down to that last drop. So I try to get at least that last drop down to the pool that it hits, and sometimes a little bit of the stream that it goes into, because we don't have a large flat pool for it to go into and do this wash effect that a lot of other photographers tend to get. If we find one that does that, then we're in good luck. So what we want to do is at least get some of the top all the way down to the bottom and part of the creek down below. And we want to use interesting lines. The key too is to take a look at the waterfall and see that water doesn't always fall in a straight line. It arches out in some ways. So we can't use the water as a guide to tell whether or not your frame is straight. So we have to find something else. I looked over here at this rock here, and that seemed to be the straightest edge. The other are these trees over here. Now, using those as your straight edges, you can kind of decide as you pan back what is the straightest edge. Try to zoom in on a few and zoom out on a few and kind of get a feel for them. When you get your slides back, you're going to see which was the better composition to work with. So experiment with this for a while. Just remember, keep your your aperture between f16 and f22, and a shutter speed between a quarter of a second and a second and a half. Now I'm going to propose that we're going to move down there by those yellow flowers.
Okay.
Come to the feast, all you wounded and weak. Come and receive the bread of life. Bread of life. Come to the feast, from the greatest to the least. Drink and believe the blood of life. The blood of life. And the memory of who I was fades away in the arms of love. Watch my fears come undone like a thief on the run. We're beggars to be